So this was gifted to me the other day. It's a mid 1970s Hobart heavy duty slicer. And the mechanism for the thickness, adjusting the thickness, was broken by one of the previous owners trying to free it up. See, so that's going to prove to be my nemesis. Anyway, it's the anodization, the anodized portion. Anyway, that's peeling off, flaking off, so I decided to have to get rid of it, and it's too big of a process to redo it. The paint also has to come off. I conferred with Mr. Scout Crafter, and I'm going with a self-etching primer and an enamel appliance paint. See what we can do with that. That's the sharpener, the built-in sharpener, and it too has some issues. It's frozen up. One of the stones is cracked. The motor turns barely. Sounds like a rough one. That's where the broken part is for the adjustment under the bottom. The bottom was so gummed up there was no way it was going to move. It's a cast aluminum piece, and there it is, broken in pieces. I went with like a JB weld and reattached it, drilled a couple of holes and wired them together to pull it tight, and it looked pretty good. It held up pretty good, so you'll see here coming up the results of my labor. That's the handle with the anodized portion peeling off again. I used a very basic paint stripper on all the parts that needed to be repainted, and that's kind of the results I was getting. It's not perfect. There's some runs, there's some chips, but I was happy with it compared to what it started, and to redo it you have to strip that all off. Now there, I used oven cleaner to get the anodized surfaces off. You don't want to leave it on too long, it will blacken the metal, and that's after a little bit of hand polishing. There's the portion of the sharpener. The wheel wasn't cracked at that point until I tried to take it off, it fell apart. That's the undercarriage again, you can see the grease, and there's why the motor barely turned. That was like a grease brick. So I was able to get it all out though, and that's probably a repeat, but there we go. Those parts I worked on together, those were the final big pieces. So there is all the pieces ready to go back together, and I'll be darned if I could remember the right order. So I was kind of like a hunt and peck, but I did have the parts manual, that helped. So I went outside because I didn't want to carry it upstairs again when it was fully together, and I got the tubes portion back in, and getting those aligned up and pushed all the way through and locked down was quite a bit of chore. I wanted that, make sure that would slide real smooth, and it does. And you can see I got the bronze piece there, the one half of my nemesis, and I locked the tubes in once I had them in place. They're double Allen set screwed. And there's the new, the re-fixed up conditioned connector for the electrical. And there's my part, wired together and surrounded in, this was Gorilla Glue style, 2-part epoxy, supposedly the heavy duty stuff. And there it is trying to go in. Kind of like aligning 6 pieces at once to get it to set in place, along with getting the handle through to reattach. And it was a little bit of a pain, but the result was that the part that was originally broken, just putting it back in, completely failed. So I'm going to have to strip all that stuff off and take it in and get it professionally welded, which it's hard to find a good aluminum welder, cast aluminum welder, at least around here, but we'll do it. And so anyway, I decided I could put everything else back together though, and there's the motor going back on, and that way it's that much closer to being done. There's the original switch, still works, still good. It doesn't have the label on it anymore, but that's all right. And wired it back up, and there is the main body all put back together. I went ahead and locked the thickness of the slices in place since the adjuster's broken still. I tried to get all the big pieces together, the pieces that were easy to identify where they go. There's my sharpener. By the way, it's all freed up, and it is perfectly operational with a new stone on the one side. I had to remake these. They're little sacrificial parts that keep the sharp edges from digging into the metal tray. They had worn down and the metal had dug into the tray, so I made new ones. And I'll need to make a few extras just to replace as time goes by. And there she is, It's a fully functional, way bigger than I could ever imagine meat slicer, but it was a lot of fun. Way too many hours. Was not worth it in one bit, but that's okay. It was worth it to me, and that's all that really matters. And here she is. There's the grand finale. I flipped it on and realized it wasn't plugged in at first, but that's me. And there she is. She runs smooth, quiet. You turn the switch off and she just slowly rolls down to a stop. She's got good torque. It's a beautiful old machine. I can't tell you. It weighs a ton, and now I don't know what to do with it. Any ideas? Let me know. So on behalf of me and my QA Jake, I'd like to thank you for taking the time to watch probably the most boring video on YouTube. But if you enjoyed it, go ahead and click down below, like, subscribe, give me a thumbs up. Come on now. I got to get something going with this thing. Anyway, just kidding. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you ever have any questions about an antique meat slicer, ask Jake. He thinks I'm funny.